We're going to be continuing in the first book of Israel, chapter 3. Keep your vows. Yahweh will demand them of you. This is the merciful way. Okay, this is the merciful way. And we're going to be starting on page... We're going to go to the bottom of page 44. We're going to backtrack just a little bit. Okay, because last week we were... when we were concluding, I kind of went through this a little fast. And I kind of want to go into a little bit more detail in this section here where Pastor is talking about Psalms chapter 50. Because one of the things that I had made mention of last week at the end of class was one of the things that Yeshua said. He said, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Okay, so I want to go back to this part here, and we're going to cover that a little bit more in detail, because it's very important for us to understand what Yeshua was saying there and what Pastor's really trying to get across to us concerning keeping our vows and how important it is, you know. Because remember, one of the things the scriptures also says that if you're faithful in the little things, you'll be faithful in much, right? So all these little things that Yahweh, or what we consider the little things that Yahweh allows us to go through, is training for a much higher position, okay, for something much larger than what we can even imagine. Right? It's larger than what we can even imagine. So the bottom of page 44, and it's going to be a little while before we get to highlighting, so, you know, I'm just letting you know ahead of time. But at the end of class, if I don't tell you to highlight, then let me know. God, we didn't highlight anything. But it's going to be a little bit before we get there. Okay, so here at the bottom of page 44, the second to last paragraph, it says, go to Psalms 50. This whole chapter is concerning tithing. It is also concerning keeping your word. The same vow that Jacob vowed, we take upon ourselves. That is how salvation is wrought. Yahweh will not give you salvation. He is not obligated to give you salvation unless you perform your word. Psalms 50 verse 1. Psalm 50 verse 1. The Almighty Father Yahweh speaks and calls the earth from the rising of the sun to the going down. Out of Zion, the perfection of beauty, Yahweh has shown forth. Our Father will come. Okay, and of course, get rid of that word there. He will not be silent. A fire will devour in front of him, and around him a tempest will rage. He summons the heavens from above and the earth so he may judge his people. Okay, so he's gathering his saints together. So let's continue on here. It says, for what they are about to do here, Yahweh says, gather my saints to me, those who have ratified my covenant over sacrifice. Okay, so this is the word ratify. Sign or give formal consent to, contract or agreement. Make it officially valid. And some of the synonyms are approve, agree to, accept, affirm, uphold, authorize, validate. You see the word sign here? Put one's name to. Okay, put one's name to. Does anyone here remember affixing their seal to something? Exactly. And I use that phrase so that you can remember you affixed your seal. You put your name to an agreement with Yahweh, right? You agreed that this is what I want to do. I want to learn your ways, Yahweh. And you agreed with it. You ratified the covenant. You agreed with the way of Yahweh. It says, this is what I want to do. Okay, and this is how important it is. All right, and Pastor's really going to get more in depth concerning that vow. So for those who ratified my covenant over sacrifice, those who agreed with my covenant over sacrifice. Now, let's look at this word sacrifice. Okay, so the word sacrifice. An act of slaughtering an animal or person, okay, or surrendering a possession as offering to gods or to divine or supernatural figure. Some of the synonyms here are hecatomb. I think that's how it's pronounced, but it's an old Roman or Greek situation where they sacrificed. I think it was 100 oxen. You know, so it's like a big old like burning, a big sacrifice. And immolation. Who knows what immolation is? right, to offer something with fire. But then the one that caught my attention was self-immolation. Okay, people burning themselves, setting themselves on fire, okay, for whatever reason, sacrificing themselves through the fire. And one of Yahweh's laws is don't sacrifice your children through the fire, right? Now, look at the, here as a verb it says, offer or kill as a religious sacrifice. And then in the Hebrew, it's word number 2077, and it means a slaughter, the flesh of an animal, the victim or the act. Okay, the victim or the act. So when I was going through this, one of the things I was thinking about is what Pastor had been teaching us concerning the burnt altar and what that represents. Okay, and so when I was thinking about what he's saying here, Yahweh says, gather my saints together to me, those who have ratified or those who agree with my covenant, agree with my way, will learn my ways over the sacrifice. Okay, those things which lead to this burning, right? Y'all understand that? We all understand that? So we're agreeing with Yahweh instead of agreeing with the teachings of this world, which is going to lead to this prophesied global burning. Okay? This is one of the things that Yahweh wants us to understand here. This is one of the things that Pastor's trying to get us to understand. Okay? And we don't agree with these teachings if we break our vows. So, we can look at these things as little things, not paying, tithe or not paying our debt, oh, my brother, 50 cents. That's only 50 cents. Okay, well, if you're not faithful in the little things, then how's Yahweh going to trust you with life? Right? What were we created for? Well, we're going to cover that later on in this sermon because we were created for a specific reason. And the clue is in the title here. Okay, I'm going to read this to you one more time. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Well, I'll read it to you. Keep your vows. Yahweh will demand them of you. This is the merciful way. Right? So Yahweh's teaching us to have this character in us so that we can actually show mercy to others. Right? And we're going to get into that. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. So let's take a look at a few scriptures here because I really want to drive this in. Okay, Hosea 6 verse 6. Hosea 6 verse 6. That's on page like 680 something. 687. And this is where Yeshua got this from here. Hosea 6 verse 6 on page 687. For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of Yahweh more than burnt offerings. Okay, you see that? So what did we just talk about concerning the burnt offerings? Okay, you see, Yahweh says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of Yahweh more than burnt offerings. Without the knowledge of Yahweh, you're going to be bringing forth the burnt offering. Right? Do we get it? This global prophesied burning is going to take place because they don't have the knowledge of Yahweh. All right? Let's look at Matthew 13:9. Matthew 13, or is it 9:13? We'll see. I think it's 13 verse 9. Nope, maybe it's 9:13. Okay. Matthew 9 verse 13 on page 735. This is what Yeshua said. But go and learn what this means. So where do you go to learn things concerning the scriptures? Where do you go? The house of Yahweh, right? You have to go to the house of Yahweh. So Yeshua is saying, look, go ask at Abel. Okay, go and find out what this means. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Okay, you see how those two scriptures are connected? The knowledge of Yahweh, Yahweh says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, right? The knowledge of Yahweh more than burnt offerings. And Yeshua says, I come to call sinners to repentance so that you don't burn. So that you don't burn. All of this is connected, right? All of this is connected. And our vow to Yahweh is that we will learn these things so that we could turn people from this burning, right? So that we can teach them Yahweh's way. So let's continue reading on here. It says, and this is back in the book of Israel here, or those who have sacrificed themselves in order to keep my covenant have sacrificed, have been willing to give to the extreme, if possible, to keep Yahweh's covenant. So this is another type of sacrifice here. This is talking about, this dying, or like we read here, this self-immolation. Okay, this sacrifice is like what's being spoken of in First Kepha chapter 2, where it's, I'm going to read it. I got 50 things in my mind right now, so I'm going to have to read this. First Kepha chapter 2. On page 958 here. Okay, so this is what this sacrifice is talking about here. Starting in verse 4. Coming to him as living stones, indeed rejected by men, but chosen by Yahweh, and precious. You also, as living stones, are being built into a spiritual house, the house of Yahweh, to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Yahweh through Yeshua Messiah. Okay, offering spiritual sacrifices. Okay, giving of yourselves, giving of your time to learn the way of Yahweh, separating ourselves from the world, coming to this house, okay, against everything that we've been taught our entire lives, and making this choice to do away with those things and learn the way of Yahweh. That's acceptable to Yahweh. Okay, that's an acceptable sacrifice. We're changing, we're turning from the things that we were once taught. Okay, giving up one thing for another. So continuing on here, back in the book of Israel, it says that the heavens will declare your righteousness, O Yahweh, for you are the judge. Selah. Yahweh says, hear, O my people, and I will speak. Hear, O Israel, and I will testify against you. I am Yahweh your father. I will not rebuke you for your sacrifices or for your burnt offerings, which are continually before me. I have no need of a bullock from your house, nor of a he-goat from your fields. For every beast of the field is mine. The cattle on 1,000 hills belong to me. So Yahweh says, look, I don't need anything from you. I don't need your bulls or your he-goats. Okay, I don't need that. Remember, let's take a look at a couple more scriptures here. Turn to Jeremiah chapter 7. Jeremiah chapter 7. It's on page 579. Look at verse 21. This is what Yahweh of hosts, the Father of Israel, says. Put away your burnt offerings with your other sacrifices and eat meat. For I did not speak to your fathers or command them about burnt offerings or sacrifices in the day that I brought them out of the land of Egypt. But this thing I commanded them, saying, obey my voice. So what is he saying there when he says, obey my voice? Obey the one sent, right? Obey the teacher. Obey your teachers. Okay? Obey your teachers. And I will be your father. So this is conditional, right? If you obey your teachers, I will be your father. Remember we talked about conditional vows? Okay, Yaakov made a conditional vow. So this is conditional. If you will obey my voice, I will be your father. And you will be my people and walk in my ways that I have commanded you, okay, that I have taught you, so that it will be well with you. But guess what the next verse says? But they did not obey, nor pay any attention. Instead, they walked in the counsels and in the imagination of their evil heart and went backward and not forward. Okay, you see that? Yahweh said, look, I have no desire of your burnt offerings. Put away your burnt offerings. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. But they didn't listen. And so you see, the world is going to come to an end. Okay? It's going to come to an end because they did not listen, nor did they pay any attention. Now, here's a very important part right here, and then I'm going to continue reading. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 10. Okay? And again, this is very important for our understanding, especially in these last days. Okay? When Yeshua said, go and learn what this means. Okay? Go and learn what this means. And it's a lot more to go with this, but you know how this is. It's you can't cover it all in one class or one sermon. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 10. It's on page 949. We'll start in verse 8. First he said, sacrifice and offerings, burnt offerings, and offerings for sin you did not want, and had no pleasure in them, which are offered according to the law. Then he said, behold, I have come to do your will, O Yahweh. He takes away the first priesthood, and that he may establish, so that he can establish the second priesthood. And by that will, we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Yeshua Messiah once and for all. And remember, Yeshua was a living sacrifice. Okay. So you see, through the way that Yeshua lived, okay, through the way that he lived, he was able to redeem us from death. An acceptable sacrifice, his life was an acceptable sacrifice to Yahweh. Okay. Now, the fact that they murdered him isn't lawful. Okay. But all of this is part of the will of Yahweh, part of the plan of Yahweh, because in order for sins to be forgiven, blood must be spilled. Sin brings what? Death. Okay. Sin leads to death. And Yeshua was willing to go through what he went through so that we can have life. Okay. So that we can have life. Now, let's look at verse 10. And by that will, we are established through the offering of the body of Yeshua Messiah once and for all. And every priest stands daily ministering and offering again and again the same sacrifices, which can never take away sin. So this is one of the reasons why Yahweh says, look, I don't care about your bullocks or your he-goats. Put away those things and eat meat. Right? Remember what Hebrews 5:12 says? Meat is for those whose senses are well trained. Let me see. Verse 14. Hebrews 5:14, just a couple pages back. But strong meat belongs to those who are full grown, for those whose senses are trained by practice to discern both righteousness and evil. Okay? This is what Yahweh is telling you to eat. He says, practice my law, keep my law, and be righteous. Learn the difference between righteousness and evil. Okay? And it says here, I want to point this out. It says, trained by practice to discern both righteousness and evil. Not to practice both righteousness and evil, but to discern, to know the difference between the both of them. Okay? So with that in mind, let's continue to read here. And remember, all of this, is because of what the scripture says. It says, this is Psalms 50, verse 1. Gather my saints to me, those who have ratified my covenant over sacrifice. Okay, and so we're going in depth in this, but you see how Pastor says, look, in just these few words, not these here, but whenever he does these, he'll say, look, there's like 50 sermons in just these couple words here. You can see how deep the word of Yahweh gets. We have to study these things out. We have to have the entire book of Yahweh in our head so we can gain the understanding that's necessary to govern, to guide, and to teach others. Okay, we can't be lazy in these last days, man. Continuing on here, Pastor says, yes, everything around here belongs to Yahweh. Everything on earth and the earth is his, are his. The heavens are his. He's the one who created them. It was evil beings who tried to take over what Yahweh owns in an unrighteous manner. I know every bird in the mountain. Did you get that? Yeshua backed this up even more. He said he knows even when a sparrow falls to the ground. How amazing is that? Okay, when you really consider that, Yahweh is in the third heavens, but he knows when a sparrow hits the ground here. Okay, that's amazing. And that's just one example. Yahweh knows everything that's going on, everywhere, all the time. Okay, everything. But Yeshua is a sparrow hitting the ground. Okay, when a worm loses its life, when a person loses his life, whatever, Yahweh knows what's going on. That's how amazing his mind is, and he wants us to have the same mind. But it takes training. Okay, he can't just turn that kind of a power over to anyone without training. Without training, you know what you would do with it. Look at what we're doing with what little power we have now on the earth. Right? Remember, nuclear power, that's as far as you're going to get, nuclear power. With little bit of knowledge you have, you're going to use it for, building military, getting your military might. Okay, oppressing people, starving the people so that you can have a stronger army. But not in Yahweh's house. Right? Isaiah 2:2-4. You come here, learn Yahweh's ways, and learn war no more. Then you will know when the sparrow hits the ground. In fact, we'll be able to make sure that, everyone enjoy, even the animals enjoy life. We'll make sure that they enjoy. Remember the fish? Remember that video? That was years ago. Pastor didn't show the video. The video was shown where, was Pastor whistling or calling a fish and they jumped out of the water or something like that? I can't remember. What was that? Y'all gonna leave me hanging up here like that on? He was calling the fish, okay. And they came to him. He was calling the fish. They were like playing in the water, dancing, not dancing. They're swimming around. I think didn't one of them jump on a rock or on a branch or tree or something like that? That's amazing, man. Just to watch, these other creatures enjoy life. This is what Yahweh's training us for, so that we can thoroughly enjoy life. Man, this is great. So let me continue on here. It says, let's see. He knows when you take, let's see. He said he knows even when a sparrow falls to the ground. He knows when you take the mother and the eggs. Okay, this is a law, or that is a law. You shall not take the mother and the eggs. You could take the bird or the eggs, but you cannot take them both. And that's positive law number 148. Okay, you can't take them both. I know every bird in the mountains. Yahweh can do this because he has the full use of his mind. See, remember, it's not Yahweh's subconscious mind. It's his full mind. Okay. For us, it's a subconscious mind, but one day we'll have the full use of all of it. It'll just be our mind. You will be able to one day do this if, okay, you see that? That's conditional. If you will abide by the laws of righteousness, okay? If you'll abide by the laws of righteousness. But remember, you can't just do it on your own. Okay, he says, obey my voice. Okay, obey my voice and do these things. Walk in the ways that you are taught. And the animals of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine with all of its boundaries. Not just the earth, but also the whole universe. Will I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Offer thanksgiving to Yahweh. Pay your vows. Pay your vows. Whatever you have made, no, you are not going to feed Yahweh. Neither are you going to starve Yahweh to death by not paying your vows to him. However, you will starve yourself. Okay, so ultimately, what will you starve yourself of? Okay, ultimately, life. Okay, you're going to starve yourself of life. You're going to die. We're all going to die if we do not keep these laws. Okay, if we do not keep the laws of Yahweh, we're going to die. Sin leads to death. Okay, you're going to starve to death. And you are right, Spirit Holy. You do starve Spirit Holy when you don't feed, Spirit Holy with the laws of Yahweh, right? You do starve Spirit Holy, and eventually, we will die. So here it says, you will starve yourself if you do not pay your vows to Yahweh. One of the vows is that you pay your tithes and your offerings. You made that vow to Yahweh upon baptism when you promised to keep Yahweh's laws. Pay your vows to the Most High. I would like to remind you, you don't send your tithes to heaven. Does anyone send their tithes to heaven? No, right? You don't send your tithes to heaven. You don't. And I love how Pastor does this. It's kind of like, he makes it seem so silly that it's like, oh, I don't send my tithes to heaven. I don't. He says, you don't send your tithes to heaven. So be careful in your way of thinking. Okay, be careful in your way of thinking. Don't act like a fool now. Don't make rash statements. Yahweh is in heaven. You are here on earth. This is where you have to serve Yahweh to get your points. Right here at his house that he established. Okay, you get that, man? I want to read it one more time. Okay. Do not make rash statements. Yahweh is in heaven. You are here on earth. This is where you have to serve Yahweh to get your points. Right here at his house that he established. Did we restore the Levitical priesthood? Okay, and that's a question. He's like, did we restore the Levitical priesthood? That is so funny. It sounds like the voice of a fool. They say you can't pay tithes unless you establish the Levitical priesthood. It's so stupid, some of the things they come up with to deceive. It comes from the mouths of fools. Okay? It comes from the mouths of fools. Pay your vows to the Most High. Call upon him in the day of trouble. That is, if you will pay your vows, and I will deliver you. You are cut off from him if you don't. Okay, because remember, our iniquities, our sins and iniquities cut us off from Yahweh. There is no way he would deliver you unless you are in contact with him. You do not even have the right to call upon him. You see that? If you don't keep your vows, you don't even have the right to call upon him. Proverbs 28:9. It says, he who turns away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayers are an abomination. Okay, so he who turns his ear away from hearing the law, even his prayers are an abomination. So I read that. I wanted that to be read because it says you don't even have the right to call upon him. Okay, if you're not keeping Yahweh's law, if you're not keeping these laws, Yahweh's not going to hear us. Okay, so look over to Romans chapter 10 also. Romans chapter 10. Verse 14. It says, how then can they call upon him whom they have not believed? And how would they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how would they hear without a preacher? And how can they preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the message of peace, who bring glad tidings of righteous things. But they have not all obeyed the message. For Isaiah says, Yahweh, who has believed our report? Okay, so not everyone believes the message, right? But the message of Yahweh is going out to all of the world from his house, right? And those of us who hear, we've made vows to be obedient to the teaching so that we can have a part of what Yahweh is trying to establish here, which is everlasting righteousness and peace, okay? Bringing a unity, that's going to cause all life to flourish, to thrive, okay? And to enjoy it. Just can't overemphasize that enough. People are miserable in the world. But if we learn to keep our vows, we can change all of that. Okay, teaching them to keep their vows, right? This is a huge thing that we're a part of right now. Continuing on here, it says, by another prophet, he asked, do you have the right to call upon my name when you are breaking all of my laws? Again, we don't have the right to talk to Yahweh. Okay, we don't have access to him. We've separated ourselves from him because we've broken our vow. We broke the agreement with him. Call upon me in the day of trouble. Pay your vows first and then call upon me in the day of trouble. And I will deliver you and you will glorify me. But to the wicked, Yahweh says, what right do you have to declare my statutes or take my covenant in your mouth, since you hate my instruction and have cast my words behind you? When you saw a thief, you want to join yourself with a thief? You better not, because if you do, you become a thief too. And remember, it was either last week or the week before last, we were talking about the manager. Remember, the ruler called him into account and said, I heard you're wasting my things. And so then he said, well, he joined with the thieves. He says, well, I'm too old to dig and I'm too proud to beg or something like that. And so he said, I'm going to join with the thieves. And so he started stealing from his owner, saying, well, your debt is now 50 instead of 100, and so on and so forth. Okay. This is what one of the things he's talking about right here. When we join ourselves to thieves, we become thieves. Right. So let's continue on here. It says here, if you uphold a man who is breaking contracts in what he is doing, and you don't tell him, you need to repent of breaking contracts. You become a contract breaker yourself. If you uphold a fornicator in what he is doing, you become a fornicator yourself. Highlight this part, man. Anything you hold up for in your mind, that is what you become. You are what you think. And highlight. Anything that you hold up for in your mind, that is what you become. You are what you think. And remember, Yeshua magnified the law. He says, if you've done it in your heart, then it's though you have done it. Right? So this isn't a new teaching here. When you saw a thief, you consented with him. When you saw an adulterer, you participated with him or her. You might remember the law of possession. I think the law of possession is broken even more than the law of keeping your vows. Why did he say that? Well, think about what's going on in the world today. All of these unlawful relationships, right? He said, let me go back up just a little bit. He says, and when you saw a thief, you consented with him. When you saw an adulterer, you participated with them, right? The law of possession says these two laws are broken more than all of the rest of them. I think those two laws are the two laws we need to set in our minds that we're going to do everything we can to keep from breaking them. I think they are broken more than any other laws. Your mouth is given up to evil and your tongue weaves a web of deceit. Put this in your own life and what you are doing. If you are doing it, brethren, there is very little time to straighten yourself up. You need to straighten up and stop doing these things that break or go against Yahweh's laws in any way. Any way. Okay? Even if it's showing contention to the priest. If the priest give you instructions, we need to follow those instructions, right? We need to follow those instructions, period. It says here, think what you can do to conduct your life and stand on that principle. Stand on your word. Make sure you can do it. Or, as Yeshua said, count the cost before you start building the house. Otherwise, you're going to be laughed at. Okay, you're going to be laughed at. Count the cost. All right, we have to straighten ourselves up, man. Okay, the house of Yahweh is a house of growth. It's a house of change. Okay, we're constantly being taught the way of Yahweh. And so we have to adjust. Okay, when men first came to the house, when the men and women first came to Yahweh's house in the early 80s, look at the house now in 2020. Okay, it's not the same place. It's the same place, but it's not the same place. You know what I mean? Okay. As the house of Yahweh grows, the people grow. But 3 out of 4 fall away. People don't like change. Okay, we have to change. We have to grow. Pastor can't give us every aspect of Yahweh's law in its entirety. Okay, all at once. He has to lay the foundation and plant seeds. Okay, and then we grow. There's a lot of other things that he wants to teach us, but, you know, for the sake of the entire body, you know, he brings these things out very slowly so that we can all partake in it. Not just so that one person can spring forth and grow ahead. Okay, so that we can all grow together as a family. He knows exactly what he's doing. So continuing on here, it says, you sit and speak against your brother. You slander your own mother's son. These things you have done, but I held my peace. You had imagined that I was just like yourself. Now that's Yahweh speaking here. Okay, that's Yahweh speaking right there. If you remember in Psalms, you sit and speak against your brother. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 1 here. Proverbs chapter 1. We definitely have to understand. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 8 says, my son, listen to the instruction of your father, and do not forsake the Torah, the teaching of the law of your mother. Look at the footnote here for father. G6? Yeah. Hey, so G6, it says, he speaks this in the name of Yahweh, who is the universal father of all creation. Okay, he's the universal father of all creation, or in the name of the elders of the house of Yahweh, who are as fathers. Okay, so listen to the instruction of your father. Listen to Yahweh. Yahweh speaks through his teachers, right? Those who he has set up as priests. Okay? Listen to the teachings. Then he said, do not forsake the teaching of the law of your mother. G7, it says, that is of the house of Yahweh, in which the faithful are begotten. How are you begotten? By the message, right? By the teachings, right? You're begotten by the message in the house of Yahweh, your mother. The teachings of, right, like it says right here, listen to the instruction of your father, the priests, the teachers, okay, who represent Yahweh, okay, taught by pastor. And it says here, at the house of Yahweh, your mother. Now, I wanted to read that because let's take a look at what pastor said here. You sit and speak against your brother. You slander your own mother's son. Your brethren in the house of Yahweh. We break our vow to Yahweh when we do these things. Remember, Yeshua said, you know, I'm trying to remember how he said it, but I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, you starved me and you didn't give me clothing and things like that. Okay, you know what I'm talking about? He said, when did we do that to you? When you did it to these little ones. Right. I was in jail. You didn't visit me. When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. You know, when I was naked, you didn't give me clothing. Oh, well, Yeshua, hold up. When did we do you like that? When you did it to Koheleth. You know, when you did it to Koheleth. All right, so I expect food after. No, I'm just playing. But, you know, when we do each other like this, we think that we're just dealing with just someone, you know, insignificant in our minds. But Yeshua said, no, you're treating this one insignificant in your mind. You're doing it to me. This is my brother that you're disrespecting here. You're doing this to me. Remember, Yeshua said, it's in Yakanah. I want to read this because this is how important this is here. You call me teacher and leader, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Since I then, your leader and teacher, have washed your feet, you are also bound in obligation to wash each other's feet. For I have given you an example that you do as I have done. Truly, truly, I say to you, the servant is not greater than his ruler, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you understand these things, joyful are you when you do them. Okay? When you serve one another. Okay? When we serve one another, when we understand what is making us, then we're truly joyful when we realize we're humbling ourselves to do these things, okay, to bring joy to someone else's life. Now, this is what I was looking for right here. This is Yakanah 15, verse 14. Okay, so let me reiterate why I'm reading that here. It says, this is Pastor back over in the book of Israel. It says, you sit and speak against your brother and slander your own mother's son. In verse 14, on page 833, Yeshua said, you are my brothers if, okay, see that word if again? Conditional. Okay, you're only Yeshua's brother if you do whatever I command you. No longer shall I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his ruler is doing. But I have called you brothers, because everything that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you, and ordained you that you should go and produce fruit, and that your fruit should remain. So whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give to you. These things I command you so that you may love one another. Okay. Oh, you know what? I actually read that wrong right there. I'm sorry. Let me read verse 17 again. These things I command you. Okay. These things I command you so that you may slander one another. I read that one wrong. I read it right the first time. Okay. Let me look at that one more time here. These things I command you so that you can love one another. Okay, so that you will love one another. Not slander one another. Yeshua never taught us, the house of Yahweh never teaches us to slander one another. Okay? He says, if you do what I command you, then you're my brother. Yeshua is the firstborn of many brothers, okay? But we're only his brothers. We're only in unity with him when we learn how to love one another, not slander one another. Okay? And this is what Pastor's talking about here. You sit and you speak against your brother. You slander your own mother's son. These things you have done, but I held my peace. He's allowing us to look, you're being taught not to do this. Get it out of your system. Okay? You only have a little time, like Pastor says, straighten out this mess. Okay? But I held my peace. You have imagined that I was just like yourself. You get that? You imagined that Yahweh was going to go against his word just because you went against your word and you got yourself into this mess? No, he demands that you straighten it out. Next page, man. I will rebuke you and accuse you to your face. Consider this now, you forgetters of Yahweh, or I will tear you to pieces and there will be none to deliver you. Where is the mercy? You see that question right there? And this goes back to the title. This is the merciful way. Okay, keep your vows. Yahweh will demand them of you. This is the merciful way. So where is the mercy? The mercy comes from taking this crap away from the world that we are seeing take place right now. The mercy comes from stopping wars. The mercy comes from stopping the thefts. The mercy comes from stopping fornication, adultery, and disease. This is where the mercy is. Okay? So let's go back up and highlight this. Okay, right after where it says, where is the mercy? Highlight, the mercy comes from taking this crap away from the world that we are seeing taking place right now. The mercy comes from stopping wars. The mercy comes from stopping thefts. The mercy comes from stopping fornication, adultery, and disease. This is where the mercy is. Okay, and highlight. Okay, remember mercy, Isaiah 2:2. That's mercy. Yahweh established his house so that we can come and learn his ways. That's where the mercy is. Okay, and we vow to partake in that mercy. Okay, and to learn how to be merciful and compassionate. Continuing on here says, Yahweh would not be merciful if he allowed this to continue. Think about it. Think about the world right now. Okay, all of the death, the misery, the sickness, disease. Okay, this is only for a short time period. It would not be merciful if this continued on for millions and millions of years. Okay, it couldn't though. It actually couldn't. Okay, it couldn't go on that long. But if Yahweh allowed it to, how would that be merciful? It wouldn't be. Okay, it wouldn't be. That's the reason he created you. Oh, did you get that? That's the reason he created you. All of creation is waiting for us, right, to bring forth this mercy, okay, to stop the vow breaking. Because remember, ultimately, the vow is we will listen to you, Yahweh. Okay, in a nutshell, that's the agreement. Yahweh, you will be our Father. We will be your people. We will obey your teachings. That's the vow in a nutshell. Okay, we will obey you, Yahweh. That's the reason he created you, so he could put a stop to all of this. It is a poor sense of mercy to think that Yahweh is going to join you in truce breaking. And remember what a truce is. A truce is an agreement to stop arguing and fighting. Yahweh's not going to join us in arguing and fighting. He's not a truce breaker. Okay? We come here to learn war no more. That's the agreement. We're learning war no more. Whoever offers the sacrifice of praise and honor to me, and he who offers his conversation aright, he who does what he says, in other words, prepares himself to walk in my ways, obeying every word that proceeds from the mouth of Yahweh, I will show the salvation of Yahweh. He will not even be justified to show you salvation unless you do these things, because you would just continue to bring hurt on someone else, right? And this is what we see in Cain, okay? Continual war, okay? Continual war. Why are you angry? Okay, if you do righteousness, will you not be accepted? Oh, I think I'm just going to kill you because I'm tired of hearing that stuff, right? That's what occurred. And we see that teaching, what it leads to today. Nehemiah 15, chapter 1, verse 5. I said, I pray, Yahweh, Father in heaven, O great and awesome Father who keeps your covenant. Yes, you can depend on him to keep his covenant. He is not going to break it. He is not going to make a contract with us and then back out on his word. He is faithful to do everything he says, and that is how you can become, that is how you have to become to be perfect, like Yahweh is perfect. Okay, honoring your word and your mercy and love with those who love you by observing and doing all your laws. Part of Yahweh's covenant is that he will not break his covenant. He will keep that covenant. Remember, it's impossible for Yahweh to do what? To lie. I mean, just think about that for a second. Impossible to lie. That's amazing within itself. Okay, that's amazing within itself. It's impossible for Yahweh to lie. Whew. Man, praise Yahweh. Impossible. And he says, I'm going to keep my covenant. If you do your part, it's guaranteed that I'm going to do my part, says Yahweh. All you have to do is your part. I'm going to do my part. And he has a lot more to offer than us. Okay? He's putting a lot more on the table than we are. All of the heavens, all of the resources in the heavens. And he's going to give us, we're called with his name. He's going to give us these positions in his house and his kingdom, with honor and glory forever. Right? Forever. Representing Yahweh. Everywhere we go with the name of Yahweh. Okay? Everyone's going to know what we went through in this time period. Okay, it's not going to be a secret what we went through, what we chose to do whenever we go out through the universe forever. Okay, that's a part of the honor and glory that Yahweh is putting on us. But we have to do our part to get to that. Okay, and just being able to teach is an honor. Okay, being able to teach the way of Yahweh is an honor. It shows that Yahweh trusts you. So when you have an opportunity to teach in the classes, it's an honor and a privilege. Okay, you're being trained to carry the great knowledge of Yahweh, man. It says, I desire the knowledge of Yahweh over burnt offerings. Okay, it's more desired than fine gold. And Yahweh wants to trust you with this, trust us with this. These are the things we should be thinking about, instead of the little things that we have problems with, that we make into problems in our own little minds. These things are petty. Okay, Yahweh's offering us eternal life and honorable positions in this house. But we, sometimes we have a problem getting along with one another. Oh, man. Like he said, count the cost before you build a house. You're going to be laughed at. You're building the house of Yahweh. Do you not know that you are a house of Yahweh? Okay. You're a house of Yahweh. You're building a house right now. Okay. And if you don't build it right, it's going to be tested with the fire, the test and trials, and then the burning. And your work will be shown for what it is, what material you use to build your house. Whether you use hatred and anger and, continual war or peace, love, joy, abundant living, and so on and so forth. Like Pastor said, you are what you think, man. Anything you hold up for in your mind, that is what you become. You are what you think. That clock is an unfriendly friend. Let me continue on here, man. Let's see. Okay, part of Yahweh's covenant, they will not break his covenant. Okay, it says, he will keep his covenant. You can rely upon him carrying through with what is written. Okay, man, highlight this part. That's the reason I say you can trust his prophecies. You can trust him to protect us because he has given us his word. Okay, and highlight. He's given us his word. In Revelations 3, I read it to you the other day. He says, because you have done this, I am going to do this in these last days, right? Because you have kept his word. He's going to do certain things for us in these last days. He's given us a little what? A little strength, right? A little strength. Okay, a little strength. But that little strength is a lot when you think about what we have to deal with in this world. And that's what Yahweh calls a little strength. Being able to resist the gods. Okay, being able to resist the temptations of this world, being able to stand up for righteousness. That's a little strength. Now imagine when he gives us a lot of strength. When he opens up our minds. Remember, Pastor said, you're going to be amazed at how much I've taught you. Okay? You're going to be amazed at how much this man has taught us. That's when you're really going to see the strength of Yahweh. But he's given us a little strength right now. Okay, to stand up for what's right. The strength to choose righteousness. Okay? And that's a big deal because Yahweh chooses righteousness. Let me continue on here. It says, Genesis 17:1. When Abram was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, I am Almighty Yahweh, walk in my ways and be perfect. He says the same thing to us. If we want salvation, we have to live by every word of Yahweh. We have to live by every word of Yahweh. And I will make my covenant between me and you and will multiply you exceedingly. Remember now, Hebrew says this was not just speaking to Abraham. It is speaking to those who keep the laws. Okay, speaking to those who keep the laws. Those who will come forth from that breeding program. Actually keep the laws of Yahweh. Every one of them, and be perfect as Yahweh is perfect. Now remember what we read over here. Yahweh says, gather my saints to me, those who have ratified my covenant over sacrifice. This is who Yahweh's calling here. We've all made the agreement that we're going to come to his house. Okay, we want to keep this covenant. Okay, walk in my ways and be perfect. Okay, Yahweh, we're going to walk in your ways and be perfect. And will multiply you exceedingly. And Abraham fell on his face, and Yahweh talked with him, saying, as for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of many nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you. Kings shall come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you. These are the descendants, or his seed, which is not a seed of blood, but of righteousness. Remember, what gives us the right to be called the seeds of Abraham or the sons of Abraham? When you do the works of Abraham, right? You are the sons of Abraham when you do the works of Abraham. You are the seeds or the sons of Israel when you do the works of Israel, right? You're begotten, or you become sons by the message, through the teachings, through the obedience, through your compliance to the teachings. Okay, this is how we become sons. And this is how the women become daughters. It says here, these are his descendants, or his seed, which are not of blood, but of righteousness. This righteousness is in the genes that have come down from generation to generation for all generations to come, to be your father and the father of your descendants after you. So right there, you should see that it has to be taught. Okay, we have to teach it from generation to generation. And this is where Deuteronomy, 6:7 comes in at. What does that say? Teach the law diligently to your children. Okay, when you don't teach, this is where we become forgetters of Yahweh. Okay, there has to be a teacher. Fathers, we have to teach our families. Okay, we have to teach them Yahweh's way. This is the agreement. It says here, also I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the lands of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I will be their father. And Yahweh said to Abram, as for you, you must keep my covenant, must not lie about it. You've got to keep it, you and your descendants. Otherwise, you do not have any opportunity to get in throughout their generations. Okay, highlight this part, man. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. It goes on and says, this is a sign. Okay, this is a sign, and highlight. It's a sign, but, okay, there's several aspects to circumcision. We know there's a circumcision of the flesh, and there's a circumcision of what? The heart, okay, which we don't have time to get into this evening. But consider that, okay? There's a circumcision of the flesh, okay, and there's a circumcision of the heart. It says here, you have to do it on the 8th day. This is the circumcision of the flesh. What if you missed the 8th day? You sinned. That is what you did. There is no justifying it. You just sinned, and you better ask for forgiveness. You better ask for forgiveness. You better be seeking it very thoughtfully and sincerely from Yahweh. In Matthew 5:48, therefore, become perfect just as your Father in heaven is perfect. In other words, be dependable. Become perfect just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Notice what he is telling you here in verse 37 of this same chapter. He is telling you to become perfect. You remember what Matthew 5:37 says? Let your yes be yes and your no be no. I'll see you. This is what this whole sermon is about, keeping your vows, right? Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Become perfect just like your Father in heaven is perfect. In other words, be dependable. You say you're going to do something, make sure you can do it. Count the cost, okay? What he just said right here, it ties in everything that he said at the beginning of the sermon, okay? Right here. So we have to go back and rehearse these things over and over again. Become perfect like Yahweh. Keep your vows. Study the laws, brethren. If you have any questions on this at all, get back to me. It is very important that you become one with Yahweh and become perfect with Yahweh. You do not use Yahweh's laws to fraud or to cheat. You use Yahweh's laws to prove that you will keep them and that you will not do anything outside of them. Okay? That's not a highlighted part, but I'll recommend that you highlight it. Okay? I recommend that you highlight that. You use Yahweh's laws to prove that you will keep them and that you will not do anything outside of them. I know a lot of you will be going home. Do not try to go home hungry or sleepy. Do not tempt Yahweh. Do not put a stumbling block in front of yourself and kill yourself out there on the highways. It can be done. Highlight this part, man. Yahweh will protect you. Yes. If, you see that word again? If. It's conditional. It's conditional. Yahweh will protect you if you do what he tells you to do. And so, how does Yahweh tell you what to do? Through the teachers, right? I'm glad none of you said he opens up the window and just whispers in there. Okay? No, it's through the teachings, over the lectern, in the classes. Yahweh set up teachers to teach you. This is how Yahweh tells you what to do. If you put yourself in danger, you're going to suffer for it. A wise man sees danger and flees. Yahweh bless you. And I'll turn the services back to the song leader. I love you. Yahweh bless you. Praise Yahweh. Men, excellent sermon, okay? Excellent sermon. We have to keep our vows, okay? It goes back, praise Yahweh. It goes back to when we started the class, we were covering integrity, okay? We were covering integrity. When we learn to keep our vows and honor our words, it builds a character in us that Yahweh can use, that Yahweh desperately wants. His original sons, didn't have that, okay? They left their first estate. And he created us and said, look, if you do these things, you can have a part in this kingdom and bring peace, joy, and abundant living to all of creation. Yahweh bless you, men.